Hello, welcome to the Humanergy Leadership Podcast. I'm David Wheatley, and we're here to talk all things leadership. Well, welcome to this week's Leadership Podcast from Humanergy. And this week, I wanted to talk about an old concept that I actually picked up in college way back in the late 1900s. And it comes from a professor of mine, Colin Mortlock. He studied adventure, and particularly adventure when it comes to working with kids at the time, and developed 4 stages of adventure. The first one was play, the second adventure, the third one frontier adventure, and then the fourth one misadventure. And you might think, well, what's this got to do with leadership? You know, this is adventure education and things like that. But what I've found is that more recently I've been using it from a leadership perspective, because it really plugs into leadership and the way that we operate as leaders. So if I look at those four stages for a second, and some of this is directly from Colin, and some of it I've added as I've developed this from a leadership perspective. But the play area tends to be a place where we're comfortable. We're often on cruise. It's possibly boring, and it's very easy for us. So that's at one end of the scale. And we move step to stage 2 adventure, what we call adventure. Then it's enjoyable, it's steady, it's an opportunity to practice and to reinforce learning. Stage 3 adventure, which we call frontier adventure, is when we're challenged, when there's a lot of learning going on, when it tends to be harder work, and it can be quite exhausting. We're really working at the frontier of our capabilities there. And stage 4 adventure, which is misadventure, is when we're beyond our capability. We feel a little out of control. It's frightening, and it can actually be destructive. And you can see that as a leader, you could play in any one of those 4 stages on a regular basis. What I find, though, is those middle 2 are the interesting ones. That going from frontier adventure, where we're really stretching ourselves, back to adventure and maybe dipping into play from time to time, is where good leaders tend to be. For example, I know somebody who's stepping up into a new role recently that I've been working with, and you can see that she's going from a place where it's somewhere between the play and the adventure to frontier adventure, because this is a new role, not quite sure about the scope, not quite sure about what it entails, and questioning whether she's capable of taking up this role. But what we know is that that's the learning place. And as long as you're paying attention and you're understanding that, and you don't slip into misadventure, then what will happen is you'll get better, and eventually that place will become a place where you just have adventure, the fun, the practice place. And so working through these 4 stages, you can also see that the amount of control you have goes down as you go through the stages. So level 1 adventure, which play, you have a lot of control. The external factors are very timid compared to what you bring to the table. Whereas level 4 adventure, the misadventure, you have very little control. The external factors have significantly more control over you than you have over them. The other thing that goes along this continuum is the amount of risk, because obviously there's not much risk in the play end of things, and there's a lot of risk in the misadventure. Now, if you find yourself, as I go through those again, that play where it's comfortable, you're on cruise, it's easy, it's possibly boring, you've got a high amount of control, a low amount of risk, my guess is that's not fulfilling. That second level, adventure, where it's enjoyable, it's steady, it's an opportunity to practice, and it reinforces the learning. You have a little less control, but still very much in control, and the amount of risk has just gone up a little bit. Then that's often quite where people enjoy doing what they're doing. Frontier adventure is the place we step into to really expand our horizons, to learn and develop, where we're challenged, we're learning, it's extra work, and it's exhausting. And that's one of the reasons why we have every so often have to slip back into adventure to reinforce the learning, where it's less exhausting. And then finally, if we're in misadventure at all, that destruction, the scariness of it, the out of control, we can be there for seconds, for minutes, but really we want to get to a place where we're back on one of the other 3 levels, because there's not a lot of learning going on in that misadventure other than the fact that maybe I shouldn't have gone there. And so it's paying attention to where you're at and where you need to be at your best. Because if you're at that level 1 play, you're probably not operating at your best for you and the people around you. Equally, if you're at level 4 misadventure, you're probably not at your best for you and the people around you. I'll add that little diagram I've got of what we just shared to the show notes, and love to hear any response or questions that you've got to this idea of comparing the stages of adventure to the leadership journeys that we tend to go on. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Humanergy Leadership Podcast. I'm David Wheatley, and we're brought to you by the book, What Great Teams Do Great, available now at all good bookstores. Thanks to Brian Spencer and Finkel for the music. Please share any feedback and suggestions. I'm available through humanergy.com. And go to iTunes, like, subscribe, and leave us a review so that other people can find us. In the meantime, till next time we meet, stay healthy.